Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm excited to be here today with Dr. Tim Reynolds. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about the contrast of kind of the zombie life to what it takes to move into something spectacular, and your book, Living Every Minute. And what really impresses me is that you're a doctor, you're a professor, you're a pilot, you're a world traveler, you have a ranch, you have so many things that it's almost hard for me to believe that you had a zombie story. But I imagine you did. And I would love to start off by hearing about that, because so many people and men, have times in our lives where it feels more like we're slogging through. Even I recognize, I was talking about this with someone today, like pleasure is not one of the top things in my life at the moment with COVID and homeschooling my kid and all of that, So what was it like for you in that phase?
So it's interesting. This whole concept kind of started, I was working in the ER. I'm an emergency medicine doc. And so I was working in the ER one day, which doesn't tend to be too much drudgery. You never know what's going to walk in the door. It can be kind of exciting at times. Yeah. But even in that exciting life, there are days where it just feels like you're going through the same shift, right? I'm doing another shift in the ER. Yeah. But I had a guy come in and the ambulance called in and said this man had poured a gallon of gasoline on himself in his car and lit himself on fire.
Oh, shit.
Right? And so I said, all right, well, let's get everything ready, get all the stuff, get the airway equipment, the IVs, get everything ready. They're bringing him in right now. They said he had 90% burns over his body. And so I kind of needed to see what that looked like to see if this was a survivable injury or not.
Yeah.
And so when he got to the emergency department, there's 52, 53-year-old gentleman, and he's awake, talking. He's really not in much pain. He's sort of a gray looking.
Possible?
See, I'm going to tell you, his skin is kind of leather, looking like gray leather, is a white gray leather. Oh. So what happens is if you have full thickness burns, it burns all the way through the nerve endings. And it's amazing how they have very little pain.
Wow.
The pain comes from the top layers where the nerves are. Like we're used to a burn where you go, ow, that's the layer. But if you burn all the way through that, it burns right through that and the pain goes away.
Wow.
Yeah. So he did, in fact, have about 90% burns, and it was all full thickness, which means this is not a survivable injury.
Really?
So I basically got the opportunity for the next 10, 20 minutes to talk to a dead man who didn't know he was dead. Right.
He did not know that he was dying.
No, he didn't know. How could he? He didn't understand he's still awake and talking. He wasn't in much pain. So he didn't really understand the repercussions, but I was very curious. Yeah. And I said, what happened? Like, how did you get from there to there, right?
Yeah.
Because if we can just withhold judgment for a minute,
yes,
and just say, how does a normal person get to the point that they'll sit in their car, pour a gasoline on themselves, and light a match?
Right. Something has to be so painful.
Like, I don't even have the courage to do that, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to strike the match.
No.
And so I asked him, and this was an amazing answer. He said, it's not one thing. He said, basically, I live an average life. people would think I live an average life. I go to work every day. I come home every day. I have several kids. We take care of the kids. I have a wife. We have a relationship. I wouldn't call it great, but it's not bad. And literally, it just feels like I'm a zombie every day. I just get up. I do the same thing. I go to work. I clock in at work. I go home. I drink 3 beers. I watch TV. I fall asleep. And what's worth living? What's worth living for?
God.
He had no history of depression. He was on no medicines. He hadn't had any medical problems in the past. So it wasn't like he had a psych history or depression history or any of those things. Just a normal guy.
Wow. There's so many things going through my head right now because, right, for some people's reaction to life isn't worth living would be a kind of, how do I change this or how do I fix this? And for him, it was just like, I'm out of here.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. I just did the audio version of my book.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we did is after each pillar, we kind of did a riff with one of my buddies. And he literally, we were talking about this story. And he said, so he took massive action.
Yeah.
Like courageous, massive action in a negative way.
Right. In a direction.
What if he had chose to take that same courageous, massive action and called you instead?
Yeah.
Or anybody, or done something, he would have taken a completely different path with the same process.
Right. And you have to, there's some way that either he didn't believe in that or know it was possible.
Right.
Right. Which often I think happens with men. There's so much isolation. And when that feeling of dying inside happens, what I see is if there isn't support system or a sense of it could be some other way, right? Then what other options do they see but out?
Well, who am I going to tell? I'm a man.
Right. I can't do that.
I'm not going to tell anybody. I got to keep that to myself. That's a sign of weakness. I don't want to be weak.
Yeah.
And so it profoundly changed me because I started thinking and I thought, am I living a zombie life? Is that what's happening? And I started thinking, and that wasn't to the extreme that he had talked about, but it suddenly became the biggest fear in my life, right? I don't want to end up where every day is Tuesday.
Yeah.
You get up the same way, you drive to work the exact same way, you clock in, you clock your brain in, you clock out, you go home, you drink the beers, you go to sleep, you get in bed sometime that night, and then the weekend, thank goodness you get to take a break from that, which is terrible.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the monotony of that is worse than the worst thing that could happen to you.
Wow. Yeah. So as you became aware of that potential for the zombie life, or even the partially zombie life, right? It's kind of the difference I see between men who don't necessarily think about committing suicide, but they feel like some part of them is dying inside.
Right.
What happened, or what did you see that you needed to shift?
So I think you hit a spot on. The large majority of men are never going to get to that point.
Yeah.
But that story resonates with every man.
Yes, I would agree.
Because every man sees a part of that and goes, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what my kind of mission became was, one, to create a spectacular life for myself. And by so doing, maybe I could then teach other people how to do the same thing. And what did spectacular mean? And I didn't use the word spectacular back then. That's since happened because I had to put a name to what this looks like.
Yeah.
And what are all the components of that? And what does that mean? And how do you do that in all areas of your life? And what about balance and all the questions that come up? I started really digging into and thinking about, not just for myself, but for all the people I was teaching and interacting with, and patients. And I have 5 kids. So 5 kids and all of those things. So,
I was thinking when you said, most men wouldn't necessarily commit suicide or go that far. It's kind of like that sense of, I wouldn't throw my kid out the window, but there have been moments where I really wanted to, right?
Yeah, at least 4 of the 5.
Yeah, right. And the drudgery and the monotony and how incessant parenting can be and work can be and all of those things, if we don't have something that gives us a deeper meaning or a way to feel connected and alive.
Yeah. And I think it goes to this idea, and I know you talk about this a lot. It goes to this idea of creating, what is my purpose and values and all that stuff. And that takes a while. That's not go sit in a cave and figure that out, right? Yeah. I think that's it's easy to go sit in a cave. What's hard is to live with your spouse, right? Anybody can go sit in a cave. That's easy. But to figure that out. But more importantly, are there some sort of life hacks and tricks along the way that you don't necessarily have to have that figured out, and you can still create spectacular in your intimate relationship with your spouse immediately while you're trying to figure out your life purpose.
Oh, great.
So that's really what the book is. It's really sort of chapters about this is what we actually have learned to do with 5 kids and how to raise them. Yeah. And we're a blended family, right? So how did we pass that obstacle and what did we do? And
as a divorced parent, that is soothes my heart.
Yeah. And how does intimacy, how do you make spectacular love sex with the same person for 25 years?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Give us your secrets, because I love that you're saying is it's a process to figure out your purpose and what you're here on this planet to do and all of that. But there are things that you can do in this moment, right? How do you have spectacular sex with the same woman for 25 years?
Yeah. So I'll address the first part and then that part. So the first part is, here's the first part. The first part is my purpose in life. I'll let you know as soon as I figure it out. Right. And I'm 58.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's always evolving.
Yeah.
It's not like you decide at age 22 and okay, that's it. I don't think any person that really happens to. You decide at age 22 and then at age 25, you change your mind. And then at age 30, you take even the most driven person like a Steve Jobs, right? And people say, oh, he learned to love what he did. No. When he was young, he programmed computers.
Yeah.
He ended up leading a company that was known for music.
Yeah.
Right? Apple was not the same Apple he started.
No.
His mission was not the same. Wasn't even close.
Right. So and if you are staying with the same mission from when you were 20, you're probably not growing and evolving and feeling alive in that 100%. Way. I mean, there are probably some rare people who they're born that way, like Greta Thunberg or, someone who's they're there and when they're 13 and they're going to be there forever. But
and they just stay the same thing. Yeah. Jane Goodall, there's some people like that, but it's rare.
Yeah.
So I think for most of us, just trying to figure that out while we're trying to create spectacular at the same time. So let me give you a couple of hints. So marriage. All right. So I invented what I call the 30-second makeout session.
Nice.
Okay. So imagine this, you're a guy, your wife's at her work and you walk into her work behind her, you grab her, throw up against the wall and just make out with her all tongue in, whole thing for 30 seconds. You say, hope you have a nice day.
And then you walk away.
Out and you leave.
Brilliant.
I mean, it's 30 seconds of your life.
Right.
There's you don't have 30 seconds.
Why you can't take a 30-second break. And then I just imagine, especially for women, and I think for most of us, as we get into longer term relationships, right? It's like sex has to be way more than outside the bedroom, because otherwise we never get to the bedroom. So the fact that you're bringing it into the day really ignites that fire.
What I wish most of us would realize, I was going to say men, but honestly, it's all of us, is sex almost has nothing to do with our genitals.
Yes. Thank heavens I'm writing that book right now.
And everything to do with our heads.
Yes.
I mean, my wife and I are having foreplay from the time we wake up all day long.
Beautiful.
Sometimes it leads to sex and sometimes it doesn't. And that's not even relevant.
Well, and part of what I'm writing about is as you expand the definition of sex, you're already having sex.
You're having sex. Exactly. Yeah, we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And, I always say, how does Garth Brooks play the same song for the 10,000th time? And not only does he do it great, it almost is better than he's ever done it.
Uh-huh.
And the reason is because Garth Brooks is a pro.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be a pro at something, wouldn't this be the thing you'd be a pro at?
I love it.
How can you be a professional so the 10,000th time looks as good as the first time?
Beautiful.
And part of that is just waking up and going, you know what? I'm a pro. I'm not just going to let this slip by.
And then what changes, right? What changes when that mindset changes?
Yeah, I think what changes is just the way you look at her, the way you view that. There's layers here.
Yeah.
What I thought was sexy 20 years ago is still sexy, but there's some other layers I didn't even know existed 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Some beautiful ones, some personality ones, some strength ones, some nasty ones.
Yeah.
All those great things, right? That I wouldn't even have done 30 years ago.
Yes.
So, and I just think that's spectacular. So another thing I teach men is I say, look, when you run a business, men who run businesses can understand this. If you run a business, you have to say, how do you know what your customer wants? Right? How do you know? How do you know what your customer wants? How do you know what your guys on your podcast want you to do? Well, one of the ways, ask them.
I was just going to say, yeah.
What a crazy thought, right?
What a crazy idea.
Yeah. Hey, else would you like us to provide? What other service would you like us to do? What would you like me to interview? Who would you like to hear? If that's true, and if your biggest customer of your life is your spouse,
Yeah.
why don't you ask her?
Yeah.
Why don't you say, so Pam and I invented this thing about 10 years ago, I guess now, where every year in January, she gives me the best husband list. These
Fantastic.
are the 10 or so things that would make me the best husband for 2021.
Oh, I love it. And you do
right?
the same. Mm-hmm.
And so I started doing the same, because once I started doing it, then she said, all right, what would make me the best wife, right? Because automatically that's what happens. And so she gives me this list. And here's the crazy part. She gives me the list, and some of the things on the list I could have predicted, right?
Like what?
Date night once a week, some of that I could have predicted. I wasn't doing it, by the way, but I could have predicted it.
Okay, that's interesting.
But some of the stuff you never could have predicted at all. I speak Spanish fluently. I lived in Central America for a long time. Yeah. She doesn't speak a lick of Spanish. One of the things on her very first list was say romantic things to me in Spanish.
Wow. Right.
How the hell would I have predicted that? I could have never saw that. And if I hadn't asked her, I never would have known, right? And some of the things are romantic, some are playful, some are downright dirty, some are fun. And so then masculine energy tends to be target focused, right? It's a target. If I have a target, I'll accomplish the target, right? Yes. Now I have a target, right? So then the criticism is, well, if you're just doing what's on the list, it's not very spontaneous.
Uh-huh. That's what men say to you, you mean?
That's what men and a few women, but mostly men would say. And I say, well, here's the thing. Number one, it's better than not doing it at all.
Yes.
Number two, the reality is about 3 weeks later, she doesn't remember the list.
Right. That's true.
So by the time I'm doing it 3-4 months later, she thinks I thought of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, it's a stepping stone, right? It's like as you're building that energy and doing some of those things and creating something, you know, then there's more creativity and inspiration.
Yep. And because you're going to add to the list and ideas. Yeah. And so one of the things we do is we measure. Mm-hmm. We measure. People say, well, how do you measure if you're a good husband? How do you measure that? I said, well, here's an interesting thought. What if, so we did this too. How do you do? What if on Sunday, we don't say it to each other because it's almost easier to text, right? Some things are easier to say. Some things are easier to text. So I actually text her and I'll say, on a scale of 1 to 10, rate me as a husband this week.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Well, part of what I'm noticing in all of this is you're both open to feedback, desires, right? It sounds like you're not taking things personally that, if she doesn't like this, then I'm a bad person. I'm a bad husband. You're not making a ton of meaning out of this.
No, she's my number one customer. My job as an entrepreneur, if you will, is to make sure that my number one customer is happy.
Yeah.
I have a money back guarantee.
I love it.
And so the second question that comes, so if she sends me an 8, then the second question I always write is, what would have made it a 10?
Yes.
Instead of saying, what did I do wrong? Because I learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
What would have made it a 10? And she'll tell me. And guess what? By damn, I'm going to make sure I do next week.
Amazing. Right. That is, it's really different to hear a complaint or something wrong versus what's the desire. I work with that with couples a lot. Like, okay, every complaint is, the opposite side of a coin of a desire. Speak that, because then people don't take it as personally.
Yeah. You don't need to know your life's purpose to do these things.
Yeah.
Just start doing them tomorrow.
Yeah.
Those are easy enough. Grab your girl and make out with her for 30 seconds.
I love it.
And if it leads to something more, great. And if it doesn't, great. Doesn't matter.
Yes.
Is it relevant?
I like that this is, it's like short-term spectacular, which actually the short-term becomes the long-term, and that is your whole life anyway.
Yeah.
But you're not waiting to try to create something big or something mission-driven or just, living with intention and clarity. Yeah. And there's a purposefulness in the moment.
Agreed.
And not just falling into like, I guess this is what I get.
Yeah. You have a son, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just one?
Just one.
Okay. I heard you talk about him. How old is he now?
Just turned 9.
That's just the two of you?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm going to give
Dad
you
is in the picture, local, and also, they're together sometimes. But when
so in the picture, but not at the house. Okay. Yeah. So one of the things that we did, because we had a mixed family, right? So I brought a few, she brought a few, we mixed them up together. And we've forgotten since then who brought what. It's irrelevant.
I love it.
Yeah. And they don't remember either. It's true. We don't say step.
That's amazing. How old are they?
It's all kids. Well, right now they're all adults now. Now the oldest is 32 and the youngest is 23.
Okay.
But they've never said step anything.
Oh,
That wasn't allowed in our house. We have brothers and sisters. And we have mom and dad, not stepmom and dad.
love it.
And so, yeah. And I'm not going to say it was easy. That was a mountain to climb.
I would not believe you if you said it.
Yeah. It was a mountain to climb, but it was worth the climb.
Yeah.
All great mountains are worth the climb. And so one of the things we did that I think would be great for you right now, because this was, I wish I could say I was genius enough and this just came to me as inspiration, but almost it was an accident, to be honest with you. We have these things called Reynolds retreat where every year we go do a thing with the family. Mm-hmm. So we've done crazy stuff. We've done Kenya, Machu Picchu, Grand Canyon, but we've also done super inexpensive stuff when we had no money, like just going camping in a tent, right? And then we try and combine some sort of service or learning with that adventure. Mm-hmm. And so this particular year, I think our kids were somewhere between 8 and 16 in that range, because there are 5 of them. So right where you are, Ish. Yep. We were up camping and we read a book together called The Traveler's Gift. And The Traveler's Gift comes in adult version and child version. Wow. Which I was unaware of. So the children read the child's version. We read the adult version. And then we all sat down one night at the kitchen table in the cabin. And we said, all right, so let's talk about what does it mean to be part of our family? What kind of rules do we have? Not like can't do this, can't do that, but who are we as people? Yeah. And so we came up with things like our home is a sanctuary from the world. We never criticize each other in front of other people. And there's just this list of, and they did it, not us. We actually literally kept our mouths shut. List. Yeah, we kept our mouth shut and said, tell us what, and you have to help them in their language and say, what else do you mean by that? What else do you mean? And we came up with a list. And then my oldest daughter, who was 14-ish at the time, wrote it up in a paragraph. Pamela helped her to fix it. We blew it up, framed it, and hung it in our kitchen.
Oh, that's incredible.
Called it our family mission statement. For the next 10 plus years, every time we'd have a family night or have dinner at the table, we'd all stand up. We'd put our hands over our heart like the Pledge of Allegiance. And we would read, every child would read one line, and then we'd rotate around the family.
What here's the fortunate children.
Oh, right. Here's the crazy thing that happened. Fast forward to now when one's 32, the youngest is 23. And I have 5 adult children who walk around with a laminated copy of our family mission statement in their pocket.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody should do that.
I think
super easy to do.
Yes.
Easy not to do.
Yeah. I was having a conversation yesterday where I realized, wow, most people really get intention and planning around business. Yeah. And most of us have not been raised to do that in our families, in our sex lives, in our, like the personal pieces of our lives. And so I'm 100%. Loving that you've taken that into your family and impacted them in such a profound way.
Yeah, it has just been truly a blessing. They're so close. So as they start, it says you'll have some men out there who can relate to this and some women probably who can relate to this too. It changes when they're 9 to when they're 19. Feel bad for you.
I'm feeling it.
You'll feel it more.
Yeah, I'll feel it more.
And then it changes again when they're 29, right? So there's this always continuum that goes on. And so another time we were rafting the Grand Canyon together. And while we were rafting the Grand Canyon, we were reading the book, Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson.
I don't know that.
And we were reading that book because we were basically realizing that the family we had, which is where all the kids come running out on Christmas morning and all the toys that was disappearing they were in college. They were doing their own thing. And, we were lucky to get them home if we could. And so we literally sat for 6 nights as we'd raft during the day and sit there at night and think, okay, how do we keep our family just as close as we've always been if we're not all together all the time? And so we came up with some crazy ideas, and it was their ideas, right? We have a family group text message that we're literally all day long. Everybody's talking to each other all day.
Amazing.
Even though we're in 3 different states, right? Yeah. And we have, for birthdays, we do Zoom birthday parties. And so everybody calls in, and we have a big birthday party, whoever it is. So we try and use modern technology to create it as if we were still in the same family, and what can we do? And it's, I think that's what creates spectacular. That's what spectacular means to me, is how do you do that? How do you say, I'll give you an example you said in the beginning of the interview. How do you say homeschooling's a bit of a pain in the ass, which it is.
Yes.
And how do you turn that into saying homeschooling is going to be spectacular because I'm going to do these intentional things to make it spectacular? What would that look like?
I'm curious what your perspective. I mean, one of the ways that I do that is to look at like, how could I turn this into a gift or an opportunity for growth, for knowledge, for service, right? And so as I'm attempting to figure out what homework to give my child because the school is not giving what I think is actually in any way challenging or anything,
right.
And there's the social interactions lacking and all those things. Yeah. How can I look at that as something that's growing me, that's growing our connection, right? There are some gifts here. Even today, as my kid went to his dad's house, I was like, wow, it would be really quiet in this house to be here 5 days a week, him at school. So really the gratitude for some of these things that they are hard and they're also powerful and beautiful.
Yeah. Wonderful quiet for a while.
Yeah.
And you know what? And what if you change the definition of homeschooling?
Uh-huh.
What, I'm making this up.
Yeah, please.
What if homeschooling was in Hawaii?
Uh-huh. Oh, right? I've thought of that. I almost got on a plane. It
doesn't have to be a home. Maybe the definition of home needs to change.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. What if homeschooling was on my ranch in Texas? What if I'm just making crap up, right?
No, I love
it. Doesn't have to be the definition.
It doesn't have to be the definition. And as you're saying that, it's like it could be in a different location. It could be, if I didn't call it homeschooling and I was just thinking, wow, this is like Ari and I learning to be more independent and resilient and playful and, about life.
What if it wasn't homeschooling? What if it was life education?
Yeah.
The great thing is you don't have to go to school, so I can really show you what life's about.
Yes.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let me take you this place and show you this thing that I never would have got to do if school was happening.
Yes.
Because I wouldn't have been able to take you. I wouldn't have been able to do this thing. We wouldn't have been able to spend this time doing. And they just turn it around just a little bit. I always tell people, look, you can say, hey, let's barbecue up some stuff on the grill this weekend. Or you can say, hey, let's have a barbecue, invite the neighbors who we never talked to, and let's have a reverse roast. A reverse roast is instead of saying something negative, everybody says something positive about it. Because you're creating a magic moment.
Yeah.
You're creating a moment that everybody goes, remember when we did that?
Yes.
That's a magic moment. It
doesn't matter that you may not know your purpose yet or all of those things that are the bigger picture.
Yes.
You're actually doing it in the moment.
Yeah. Because I don't know what anybody's purpose is, but I know it has to rhyme with service if they're going to be happy.
Mm.
It's going to have to rhyme somehow with serving somebody more than themselves.
Yes.
I think the problem with the cave concept is it's all about me.
Yes.
And if it's going to really have meaning, if it's going to really have meaning, it's got to rhyme with service, right? It's got to, and I'm not so sure that I'll ever figure that out. Maybe that's for other people to figure out what I'm going.
Yeah, beautiful.
Maybe they can see my purpose better than I can. Maybe they can see your purpose better than you can. You think you're doing a thing, and then after you're gone, people are going to say, yeah, she did that. But her real thing that she didn't even know what she was doing was this other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having this expansive perspective and the ability to, be creative and intentional and empowered in the moment.
Yeah. I think it's what creates a great life. Honestly, it has for us.
Yeah. Amazing. So, what do you want to leave men with? What feels important beyond everything you've already said that was important?
Yeah. So I think what I would sprinkle on top of that is the idea that you need to have some adventure in your life. And I don't want to make a huge distinction between men and women, but I'm going to say this anyway. If you're a man, particularly, you need to have some adventure. You need to have some adventure in your life. You need to have something that scares the hell out of you every once in a while, right? And so that doesn't have to be jumping out of an airplane. I've done that plenty of times. It could be just drive a different damn way to work today. You don't have to drive the exact same way every time.
Yeah.
It can be greeting your spouse surrounded in saran wrap, right?
I love it.
And nothing else, right?
Yeah.
Or in my case, since it's Reynolds wrap.
Reynolds. Yes, I love it.
I don't own any of that company. I wish I did. So I would say sprinkle everything we've talked about with some adventure. Just create an adventure. This is an event. Your life is a sculpture. Every day you add some clay. Every day you do some molding. Every day you do some scraping. And when we leave, we have the sculpture that we left. And I think if we just realize that, we'll start to live our day a little bit differently.
Ah, thank you. I can feel how much more relaxed I am than when we started this conversation. And what I loved is that we were talking about how to go from more of a zombie life to living a spectacular life. And one of my favorite distinctions you made was, it's not about necessarily finding your big life purpose, that you can create spectacular moments here and now, memorable moments and moments where people feel connected and moments where you feel alive while you're moving toward purpose if you ever find it in the first place.
Absolutely.
So, thank you for that perspective. I'm curious, what was one of your favorite parts of the conversation that you want men to hear?
I mean, honestly, I loved just watching your reaction when I talked about the mission statement for the family.
Yeah.
Creating a family mission statement, and to just see, and I've seen it in other people too. To me, that was a magic moment I'll take away from this.
Yeah.
It's that aha thing when you go, oh yeah, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's something that's going to happen. And imagine the bond that creates between you guys, the two of you. But imagine for the listeners, the bond that creates between them. Just sitting down with your children and having a conversation like that. They don't ever have that conversation with their parents.
No.
What a great idea. So I think it'll be spectacular.
Yeah, I loved hearing all of your different ideas for parenting, for having a great sex life, for, adventure and staying alive. And there's like this, just this incredible vitality and energy in you. And thank you so much for bringing tools and ways, simple ways for men and for people to actually have some more of that too.
Absolutely. There's a whole book full of it. I would love them to get it. I'm actually doing a thing for your listeners if they want to. If they'll go to livingeveryminute.com, and if they want to purchase the book and they'll use the code ALIVE, I'll send it to them for shipping and handling only.
Great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. No problem.
And for you listening, head over to ShaynaJamesCoaching.com and check out Man Alive podcast, or anywhere you get your podcast, check out the Man Alive podcast. Thank you so much, Dr. Reynolds, Dr. Tim, for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to ShaynaJamesCoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to ShaynaJamesCoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.